Welcome to the Industry Insider, brought to you by PROMOCORNER. Each week, promotional product professionals Meg Erber, Jeff Franklin, and Stephen McFadden, along with special guests, will discuss industry news, trends, and events with a focus on educating the promotional products industry. The Industry Insider, the nerdy news you need to know.
Yes, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Industry Insider, where you can get all the nerdy news you need to know about. My name is Jeff Franklin, the National Accounts Manager with Headwear USA, and I'm joined today by three other lovely folks. But before we get to them, as always, we're going to tell you about our fine sponsors for today. Our good friends over at Tervis. They've been around since 1946, and they're celebrating 75 years in business, and they started with their classic line. They've got sleek styles that make perfect for the active and on-the-go lifestyle. Tervis is the original double-wall insulated drinkware that keeps your cold drinks cold and reduces condensation. Backed by a made-for-life guarantee, Tervis is the original customizable double-wall insulated drinkware that keeps your hot drinks hot and your cold drinks cold. They're available in several sizes, including a 16-ounce mug, a 16 or 24-ounce tumbler, and also a 24-ounce water bottle. Made from Triton plastic, made in America, lifetime warranty, dishwasher, and microwave safe, and they're BPA free. Go check them out at tervispromos.com. Tell them the Industry Insider sent you. Why don't we say hey to Stephen McFadden first? Why don't we go there?
Yes.
How are you?
I thought for sure it was going to be Meg.
Stephen McFadden.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be Meg, but thank goodness. Because
Okay,
you know
how
what I
are
like to do with my time, Jeff, right?
Yeah.
I like to ask you how you're doing. So
I know,
Meg
man. I appreciate
Meg
it.
never does that. So it's like that's
been a while.
Although on the last episode, she did kick it. She did it directly to you instead of coming back to me to do it. So that was interesting. That was a new twist that Meg did. So
yeah, she likes to keep us on our toes. But I am doing great, Jeff. Enough about you. So I'm excited to be here. Be here. Excited for today's episode. So
good deal. Meg, how are you doing?
Well, no, I'm actually packing. I'm going to be working from the shore next week. Half vacation, half work. So yeah, just ready for that. We're leaving Friday night, and we'll be in Sea Isle for a full week. So I'm really excited. Just need some time. Take a break.
Yeah.
I think I'm doing an episode from the shore too. Hopefully, no more life.
We actually just came back from vacation not that long ago, and I feel like I need another one already.
Yeah, I know.
So I get it. Well, we're joined today by a special guest, a returning guest to the show, Maurice Norris with PPAI, and we're going to talk some legislation. There's been a lot of new things that have changed, and actually, as of this episode, Maurice has gotten some new news alerts to share with us. But Maurice, just in case anybody hasn't tuned in to the other episodes that we've done with you, it is customary for us to allow our special guest to get 3 to 4 minutes to introduce yourself and maybe how you got started in the promotional products industry and what you've been up to since.
As you said, I'm with PPAI. I'm public affairs manager. Basically government regulations, product responsibility. Really try to keep a close eye on any legislation, regulation at the state or federal level that affects this industry. Before that, it was kind of a lot of the same, just for other industries at the state legislative level. So I think that's me in a nutshell. I don't think I need three minutes to kind of cover what I do.
How did you find out about like PPAI? Like how did you join PPAI to do what you're doing on the government side of things?
So it's actually pretty typical for current and former government employees to go into the association world, to go into the advocacy world. So I kind of just found them through your typical contact list. Luckily enough, they were hiring when I was looking to get out of government work for a while. So here I am. It's been actually just past 5 years. So they've been putting up with me for 5 years now.
Good deal. Well, listen, I know we wanted to talk about, the Ocean Shipping and Reform Act that was just signed into action not that long ago, if I'm not mistaken. So why don't we start with that? What's new with that, or what's happening?
So yeah, like you said, it's just been I think a couple of days, just over a month. This is something PPAI has been actually working on with our coalition partners for about 10 or 11 months. Just a little quick history. It did go through several changes. There was a House and Senate version Then at one point, it was actually supposed to be included in the huge China competition bill, which I think we're going to cover in a few minutes, so I won't go too deeply into that one. But just because of kind of the fluctuations with that larger piece, thankfully, the Ocean Shipping Reform Act ended up getting a standalone vote in each chamber. And I believe that was really the result of relentless pushing by stakeholders to get Congress to understand the importance of those ideas. So just to really, brief recap, the law basically aims to alleviate supply chain bottlenecks caused by several factors. We're all familiar with the labor shortages, spike in demand for goods. Really practically, this bill directs the Federal Maritime Commission to prevent ocean carriers from unreasonably refusing to fill open cargo space with American products. Also gives FMC the authority to investigate late fees. So that's those detention and demurrage charges that have really just gotten out of control over the past several months. So there's really been a lot of lax oversight of how those charges are applied. And really what the new law does is make certain requirements a lot more detailed with those invoices for the detention and demurrage charges. And then it gives the FMC additional funding and authority to enforce U.S. shipping law.
So for someone who doesn't really get involved in the politics aspects of things, I really like to stay out of it. What does that mean for this industry? Just in layman's terms, what does that mean for this industry?
So you may have, a container that, through no fault of your own, you don't have access to because it's sitting somewhere on a dock. But you may end up being charged by the shipping company for that, even though, you're not the person that, you didn't have the chassis, you didn't have the container, you didn't have the labor. So just a lot of those different little intricacies that really weren't being scrutinized with some of those invoices. It kind of shifts the onus back to the shippers to justify some of those charges. Basically, you can't just say, even though we've been kind of dropping the ball in a couple of different areas on this, we're going to pass that cost on to you. It just kind of pushes a little bit responsibility back to the shipping companies to kind of justify some of those charges.
Good. That's good to know. Makes sense.
Hey, I'm curious from a distributor perspective, does this kind of more affect the imports for suppliers? Is that where we were seeing a big issue with this?
Yeah, I think it does give suppliers hopefully a few less headaches. We'll see once some of this enforcement starts to kick in. But obviously, also from a distributor standpoint, hopefully it results in a few less of those conversations that distributors have to have with their clients. Where I think sometimes folks are talking about much longer lead times because they just don't know when they'll have access to some of those products. So hopefully this will alleviate some of that as well.
Okay. Meg, Stephen, do you guys have any other questions on the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, or should we move into the next thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Maurice, I think the next thing that was on the list was the Competes Act.
Yes. So, this is another one that's had two different versions on both sides of the hill. It's also, USICA Innovation and Competition Act. Nowadays, as of last week and then Tuesday of this week, it's actually being called the CHIPS Act. That's because, again, the huge Innovation and Competition Act that we talked about last time was really whittled down to $54 billion in funding for American companies to produce semiconductors domestically. It also adds some tax breaks to further induce companies to do the same. So just to take a quick step back, the larger USICA bill included that policy. It really was kind of the glue that was holding all the stakeholders together in the Senate and the House. But it also included hundreds of pages of other legislative proposals, including, the trade title that required the USTR's office to establish a comprehensive Section 301 exclusion process, also required, renewal of GSP and MTB programs. So this was all the stuff I was boring you and your viewers with last time we were here. But these are issues that are important to our industry. We've been getting a lot of questions about some of this stuff. Remember, this trade war was, about 4 years old now. And some of our coalition research has recently shown that it's cost Americans over, $120 billion. So putting my little rant aside, excuse me, the bill itself is excuse me, throat stuff here. The latest, smallest version recently cleared a procedural hurdle in the Senate this week. It's expected to get a final vote next week. What's still unclear is whether some of the original bill's sponsors that were really, just heavy trade advocates on the Senate side will get their priorities included in the final version. But right now, it's really looking like this train is going to leave the station between Monday and Wednesday of next week. There's another procedural bill Monday, final one Wednesday. Senate leadership is trying to convince some of those USICA bill sponsors to try to move their priorities in the National Defense Authorization Act. So we'll see how that goes. That's usually obviously a huge annual bill that has to be passed. But a lot of these trade priorities don't typically go in there. So we'll see how that part goes.
Okay. Meg, way over your head. You're still muted. You gotta. That was a shit and a fuck. Good one.
Is there anything that the promotional product can do to help get involved? I mean, is there anything that we need to be doing to kind of help support PPAI, help support you in getting this stuff passed?
Why, thank you, actually. Yes. So Congress is going on August recess. A lot of the reason there's so much urgency around this is because, everybody wants to go home and to get their time at home over the summertime. Both chambers are supposed to be leaving DC to go on August recess within the next 2 weeks or so. They obviously have these 2 or 3 huge pieces that they need to pass beforehand. But August recess, we try to do this push every year. It's a great time for folks in our industry to meet with their legislators and their staffers. You can do it in person. A lot of times these legislators have, they have town halls. They may even just set up a table in front of a grocery store. They like to come to factories and other facilities, any production facilities. It's a great time to be doing that. So there is a way to kind of advocate for some of those trade pieces that you may like in the bill, because, again, legislators will be in their districts, in their states within the next couple of weeks. There's not a whole lot of confidence that this thing will actually get through both chambers by the end of next week. So there may be, still some room to kind of try to raise some of your issues with them. Even if some of those issues get dropped off again, they may go through the National Defense Authorization Act. So there's still room to, really push for some of the pieces that you think will help your businesses.
All right.
I like that. I like offering those factory tours up, because I can tell you right now, when I used to be just a distributor, not just a distributor, but before I came over to the dark side, I didn't know how things were made, right? And I remember the first day I walked into Jetline when they were up in Mount Vernon, I saw them printing Frisbees one at a time. I was like, really? That's how it's done? So if they haven't seen this aspect of it and firsthand, and the people and the small businesses, they may not know. We're just another number to them. So highly encourage you to reach out to your House representatives, your legislators, anyone. Get them involved. Get them to know the people of this industry and who they're affecting. I really think when you can humanize the people in this industry, it's harder to say no to people,
And I'll say, even if there's, obviously there's different industry events at the regional level throughout the summer, that's a good time too. Doesn't even just have to be the summer. Obviously, a lot of these things happen during the fall. A lot of folks, sometimes you might not know, these legislators have their staffs in DC, but they also have local offices. And, it's really good to get, that policy director, that chief of staff, whoever you can get to come through there. Those folks definitely have the legislators' ear. Those are typically the ones that they understand the issues more so than the legislator even. So if you're having, again, some industry event, you want to reach out to anybody. If you don't know who it is, who it might be, who to reach out to, just kind of give me a call. I can try to help you walk through it.
Awesome.
All right. Stephen, do you have any questions on either of the past two?
No, I keep frantically Googling, because when we say, this is the nerdy news you need to know, this is like exactly what I think of. And so I'm like, all right, chip spill. Let me look at the chip spill. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, it's cool stuff, and it's neat to see how it all integrates, right? Like, I think a lot of times we see political topics or we see different bills that are more mainstream, but we don't see all the almost like the dirty bills, right? Like all the operational side things and all the trade things and the e-commerce side and the commerce side. And it's just neat to see how those integrate.
Yeah, you've really got to be in the thick of it to know what's happening and where it's at, because once a bill gets introduced, sometimes it can take forever before anything actually happens with it. So it's like, unless you're really paying attention and getting alerts like Maurice, I mean, I don't know how people are staying on top of it, but I really appreciate the news and the updates on the stuff, because it is something that we all need to be aware of for sure. Now, Maurice, the next one that you have up here is the UFLPA, and I'm not actually familiar with this one at all. So maybe you can just give us a rundown of what that is.
So that's something that just recently went into effect, and it's basically it creates a rebuttable presumption that any products coming out of China come from Xinjiang. So it's on the importer to prove that's not the case. Now, I know it's really difficult to prove a negative. But fortunately, PPAI actually has a lot of resources on supply chain mapping. We've got a few webinars, especially with, the apparel, which is, our biggest category there. We've got 3 different webinars that cover this issue. So this was something else there's been a version of it introduced in probably the last 2 or 3 chambers of Congress. It actually just recently passed last year, went into effect last month. And CBP is, basically they recently released their enforcement guidance on that. So there's, again, a couple of different websites. They actually released some helpful information on how to comply with the new law, but that is in effect. And it's, at the end of the day, basically it's on the importer to prove that the product isn't coming from the Xinjiang region of China.
Okay, and I just looked that up. So it's the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. So I know that there's been like a ban on the cotton that comes out of that region. So that makes complete sense.
Yeah, there's just a long history of huge human rights abuses, to put it bluntly, slave labor that's going on in that region. These reindoctrination camps. So yeah, it's a huge. The UFLPA itself is actually just an update of some other existing trade law that's been on the books since I think 1930. So it's really just an update to include that, to target that region.
So while I think this is absolutely necessary, let me preface this, absolutely necessary, it doesn't really, I don't know the bill in and out, but it doesn't offer, maybe it does. I mean, what we see and what I'm sure the distributors and the end users are seeing is that when all of this was limited, right, a lot of this comes from this part of China, and then everything was pushed into India or or Vietnam or other parts. Nobody is set up with the infrastructure that China is, and this has been a lot of the reasons for the bottleneck in supply and demand. So, what's the answer? Like, what is the answer? Yes, don't do it. Great, fine, don't do it. But now what? Like, what's the answer to fix this? Fix the supply and demand from this bottleneck because of this?
So we actually have guidance on that too. I think there was a summit, product responsibility summit session from a couple of years ago that was talking about moving production out of China. That was in response to the Section 301 tariffs, which are actually, I think they were only a year and a half old or so at the time. But I think the biggest answer is basically supply chain mapping. You have to figure out where the products are coming from. It's not enough anymore to just, say it's not coming from a certain place. You have to be able to substantiate any claims you make. So again, fortunately, we've got numerous resources on this. I'm available to kind of help locate the stuff and talk it through. But I think that's basically the biggest and best tool is supply chain mapping. We also actually have, do a quick product responsibility summit plug. We'll be talking about this at Product Responsibility Summit, CBP enforcement of UFLPA. And then there'll also be a live supply chain mapping session. So, it's obviously one thing to kind of watch that recording, but we'll also be there in person, so you can nail us down with some of the tough questions in a smaller forum in person.
Since you mentioned, product costs and tariffs and stuff, is there? I know one of the things that affects obviously everybody is the inflation of cost, right? Several suppliers have kind of standing variable percentages that they'll add to things, and then there's continually price increases with products in the industry pretty much throughout the whole year, and we're expecting, I think, it to continue. Any insight as to if there's more tariff stuff to drop, or if there's kind of a flatlining of the inflation of product costs, or any insight on that?
So I can speak to the tariffs, and it really remains to be seen. The USTR's office has announced numerous reviews of the tariffs, specifically the Section 301 tariffs. I will say the International Trade Commission is actually having hearings this week. I've joined a couple of them. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they've been having different industries and trade associations discussing the impacts of the Section 232 and 301 tariffs. I will say PPAI signed on to numerous letters and done all kinds of advocacy, pushing the administration to relax or remove the tariffs because of the projected impact, downward impact on inflation. So, again, it seems to have been taken under advisement. I will say from the feedback that the commissioners in the USITC have been hearing the past couple of days, there has been some surprisingly lively conversation for a trade hearing. I will say they don't seem entirely convinced that all of the cost increases companies are experiencing can be solely attributed to the tariffs, but they do seem to understand that at least some of it is attributable to the tariffs. And they are asking, actually, I'd say all of the 3 or 4 that I don't remember names, but I've been seeing them the past 2 days. They're open to ongoing communication with stakeholders on the economic impacts of the tariffs.
Do you guys mind if I ask one more follow-up? Is that all right? I know we're going to segue.
In the corner.
I
think that's all.
Maurice, out of curiosity, just excuse my ignorance of this, I understand how interest rates can affect a kind of big picture with borrowing, but is there any impact on the interest rate being adjusted to the industry?
I think that's probably a little outside of my wheelhouse.
Okay.
I can only say, anytime you have those speculators dipping into any industry is usually not good for folks who aren't doing the speculating.
Yep.
Nice. And Meg, I want to just take a step back to your question as well, because I wanted to absolutely agree with Maurice. I mean, I think rather than, because what you said is completely true. You can't just leave the infrastructure that China has to go to, Vietnam or Indonesia or somewhere like that, because they just don't have the capability and the capacity that China does. So the answer isn't necessarily to just completely write off China, like I've heard a lot of people doing. The answer is to, be responsibly sourcing your suppliers, work with suppliers that have, 4-pillar CEDEX audits and things like that, where you're not violating any labor laws, you're, working in an eco and sustainable factory and, all these different things and checkpoints that these audits take care of. I think if you're sourcing, responsibly, then you don't have to write off the infrastructure that China has.
Yeah, I think, due diligence. Again, PPAI has a bunch of resources on our corporate responsibility page to help with that. So, again, if you need any help locating any of that stuff, just reach out to me. I'm available to help you find some of that stuff. And if I can't find it specifically, we have, other contacts who can help.
Nice. Yeah. So, Stephen, since you did some kind of segue into tariffs, that was the next thing that we wanted to discuss. And, honestly, I feel like, and certainly that has definitely contributed, if not, been the majority of the inflation. I mean, you're talking about, what was the actual hike? I can't even remember what it got up to, but it was pretty
9.1% for June.
9.1, yeah, and that's literally from 3 months ago. I mean, the data is so Hopefully we.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at inflation, I mean, I know a lot of it has to do with the gas prices going up because transportation basically hammers every aspect of every industry because things are being transported, and when the increase costs for transportation go up, the cost of everything goes up. But tariffs don't help. So I mean, honestly, if the executive office wanted to look at things to reduce inflation and the suffering that a lot of the country is going through, removing those tariffs could certainly help. It could certainly help.
Yeah, fully agree. I very hesitant to get into any pricing conversations. Not sure where the line should be drawn there from an association standpoint, but we have pushed on numerous occasions with the administration, both the USTR's office and the White House, that again, it's under advisement. This is one of the 2 or 3 big decisions the White House is supposed to be making by the end of the year, but they are considering, from my understanding, at least the Section 301 tariffs. It seems to be a little bit less definitive with the 232 tariffs, but they are considering whether to remove or relax or at least remove certain product lines, and also considering at least some, an exclusion process that's, transparent and comprehensive. So, a lot of the problem with the old exclusion process, which expired, by the way, so, it's kind of a moot point. It doesn't exist anymore anyway, but there were very small percentage of companies that applied for those exclusions that actually got them. And most of them really never got an explanation for why they were denied. So, that's part of what they're kind of considering right now, how to make the USTR's office more responsive to the concerns of companies that are, a lot of times, one of the issues is those products aren't really available anywhere else, or like you're saying, they may not be available at that capacity anywhere else. So if an exclusion is going to be denied, if that's the case, there should at least be some kind of reasoning behind it. I don't think that's unreasonable. So that is, again, something PPAI has been pushing for ever since the prior exclusion process expired. And it is what I understand the White House to be taking under advisement. Hopefully we should be hearing some good news on that soon.
All right. Maurice, are there any other major legislative bills or things that are being actioned that we need to be aware of outside of the ones that we've discussed so far?
Well, so there's a couple of things that are really outside of our control, but we have been sending letters on. I'm sure you're familiar with the port negotiations on the West Coast. We're talking about 40% of the trade that's coming in into this country can be affected by, roughly just under 30 ports or so. Fortunately, there haven't been any significant disruptions there, but we did send a letter to the White House asking them to, not really tip the scales one way or another, but just kind of, make sure those two sides they keep talking to each other. As long as they're talking to each other and they keep everything going, that's a good thing. We'd like the certainty of that contract, but in the meantime, along those lines, there's also some trucker protests in Oakland. So the truckers in the port of Oakland are actually really upset about a recent procedural development related to California's AB5 bill. Remember, this is the bill in California that basically bans independent contractors. It does have a long list of exemptions, but basically the truckers weren't in there. They've been fighting this thing for the past three years or so. It's been going all over the place at the state and federal level. And I think 2-3 weeks ago, the Supreme Court actually recently decided not to take up the challenge that the truckers had that would delay enforcement of AB5. So specifically at the Oakland port, I've been seeing reports it's basically been shut down because the truckers are literally blocking the entrance. There's about 1,000 of them. So this was, as of Tuesday, Wednesday, they've been protesting there.
That's not a little. That's a lot. That's a huge protest. Truckers. I mean, it's not the Canadian one, but that's something that I'm not even seeing that on the news. That's a little crazy.
And then back to, the previous labor negotiations, some of those port workers that are at the Port of Oakland I think there's last I saw, there was about 100 of them. This has been changing daily. They're actually refusing to cross the picket lines. So they're not working on the port side because they're supporting the truckers protest. So just kind of a, labor solidarity thing. which is, again, probably one of the numerous reasons that port has basically been shut down since Wednesday night.
Wow. And then I think you also wanted to go over, or at least just touch on the California packaging bill.
Yeah, so this is, basically an effect of climate change. California recently passed a bill. They've actually been trying to pass this bill for going on 4 years now. Excuse me. Sorry, I've got terrible allergies this week. We've been following and writing on it for pretty much the first time since they introduced this. Really, it creates an extended producer responsibility program. The intention there is requiring certain reductions and eliminations in single-use plastic packaging. It also requires all plastic packaging in the state to reach a 30% recycling rate by 28. So that's just, 5.5 years. And then more than doubling that rate to 65% by 2032. One of the reasons, aside from, obviously California is one of the biggest states in the country, the policies that come out of California are often a precursor to other state and federal policies. We're just talking about AB 5. I'll say the PRO Act at the federal level is almost a carbon copy of AB 5. So a lot of times the stuff we see happening in California happens in other states and at the federal level. So that's definitely a state that we track more closely when we're looking at, state regs and state laws that have implications for the broader industry.
Wow.
Yeah,
Meg, Stephen?
I am interested to keep an eye on that, an ear on that, just because I know it sounds really good on paper. I know there's going to be some negative kickback to that, but me being on the promo cares, what I love to hear this. I just don't want it to be, this is what you aren't hearing about it, and it's actually doing more damage because of X, Y, or Z. I feel like there's always a second side to that. So I really want to follow this. If it's something that means something to you as a listener, definitely follow along. Legislation is coming. It's going to be centered on packaging and plastic, single-use plastics, but, keep an eye on it. But yeah, thank you, Maurice. I really appreciate all of this information. I know it was a lot to take in. If you're listening to this and want more information, I would definitely recommend going over to PPAI.org's website. There's a link for advocacy. You can go down and hit legislative action watch, and there's a bunch of links of how to take action as well.
Stephen, you have any questions?
No, but it doesn't mean I'm not trying to absorb it. No, it's funny, the closest I've ever been to this, not any specific policy, but I think I've told you guys we do a trade show out in Huntington Beach, which is right by the San Pedro Bay port, and it was eye-opening because we were there. I've been there twice in the last 6 month span. And the first time was in September, October of last year. And it was like the height of everything being jammed. And I could go out to the deck of where we were staying and look out and see boats as far as you could see in both directions. And we counted 58 cargo ships, which then led me to figure out all right, how many containers can fit on a cargo ship? And you figure out that it's 5,000 to 10,000 containers on some of these ships, and upwards of 20,000 on the bigger ones. And then it's multiply that as far as you can see with boats, and then people are where's stuff? It's it's right there. It's like Black Friday's gonna be on the water. It's out there. So, but it's
Maurice,
just hearing things like this and then seeing it in person really brings some life to it.
Yeah, it does.
Oh yeah. Maurice, I do have a question for you, and it's one that I'm sure we're all sort of waiting to hear the answer for. Is LEAD going to be in person again next year?
Yeah, I'll say personally, I hope so. It was virtual this year. Just logistically, it was impossible to, also with the safety concerns and just all the protocols at the Capitol. We just, the way they're handling access to the Capitol right now, we couldn't do an in-person LEAD this year. Hopefully that changes by next year. I think those in-person meetings are important. We did have folks that, remember us from, at this point, it's, been 3 years since we've been there in person, and, they were asking for, those notebooks, those ink pens, all that stuff. that they remember us by all these different, just all the stories that we used to tell them and show those case studies in person. So I think the impact is certainly much greater in person. So I'll say I hope so.
I hope so too. I've grown so much professionally and personally since I went last time, probably 10 or so years ago. I feel like I would have a really big impact this time, and so I definitely want to go. Whatever I got to do to get involved next year, I definitely want to be there. So I know Jeff does too.
I think that because the last several years that I had done it, there's not quite as much on the agenda as far as the talking points that you're trying to hit with the legislators, but I feel like there's so much on the table right now, which is why it would be great to be there and in front of them to be able to discuss those topics to really drive the point home. But I know PPAI is doing everything that they can on the back end, as well as yourself, Maurice, to send those letters and to constantly stay in touch with the legislative branches to make sure that we're getting our point across at least. So
certainly,
at least we're doing that.
We'll just sneak in another quick plug for August recess. Please reach out. It's important to hear from you about these topics.
Good deal. All right. Well, definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing the news with us, Maurice. It's definitely the stuff that everybody needs to hear, and because it affects us all down the road and presently. So really appreciate you just being a wealth of knowledge and sharing that information with us. So if you guys enjoyed today's episode, it was brought to you by our good friends over at Tervis, and they've been around since 1946, and they're celebrating 75 years in business, and they started with that classic line. They've got sleek styles, make perfect for the active and on-the-go lifestyle. Tervis is the original double wall insulated drinkware that keeps your cold drinks cold and reduces condensation. They're backed by a made for life guarantee. Tervis is the original customizable double wall insulated drinkware that keeps your hot drinks hot and your cold drinks cold, and they're available in several sizes, including a 16-ounce mug, 16 or 24-ounce tumbler, and a 24-ounce water bottle. Made from Triton plastic, made in America, lifetime warranty, dishwasher and microwave safe, and they're BPA free. So go check them out at tervispromos.com and tell them the Industry Insider sent you. Maurice, thanks again, man. Really appreciate you coming on. And Meg, Stephen, always fun to see you guys as well. Until next time, take care, guys.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Promo Corner's Industry Insider. For more great content from industry thought leaders, including podcasts, blogs, and videos, visit promocorner.com.